Hey, yo, what a div, y'all. Let's get right into it. I need to sing some praise, partially because I feel like I've been really harsh on GGG in my past couple of videos, but also most importantly because if I don't sing this praise, I'm going to instead make a video flaming the community for their opinions on Ascendancy performance in the game right now. And instead of flaming people for their opinions, I think it's more apt for me to talk positively because I think that this is a topic that can use a little bit of positivity around it. I'm talking about ascendancies. The ascendancies in this game are really cool. A lot of them are very well designed. A lot of them, not all of them, right? We talked a little bit before the game came around. I said a couple of them were not all that great in terms of design, but I've kind of doubled back on my thoughts now that I have, a more full picture of how the game played and some things about that, in which the main sticking point that, made me come to this realization is that across 12 current ascendancies, I only feel like one is lacking what I would say is a real identity, quote unquote. And that's going to take a little bit of defining, right? So let's do that real quick. What makes an identity or an ascendancy? Think about it for a second. How do you identify Stormweaver? How do you identify Infernalist? How do you identify Invoker? How are you identifying Pathfinder, right? What's the distinguishing factors between Pathfinder and Deadeye? Well, the easy answer is the character portrait. Yeah, baby. Some of those character portraits just look real good. But a real answer, a design answer, lies in their function, right? But not in the numbers of their function. When I talk about identity, I'm talking about the things that it is capable of doing, not how well it does the thing. That is a really important line to draw very quickly. Because sometimes an idea is really cool in design and just falls flat numbers wise. Just take a look at the darkness section of Acolyte Shayula, which only has one actual real function right now in abusing no-hit runs. That doesn't mean that the Ascendancy is badly designed. It just means it needs some tuning. But the design of the Ascendancy is very good. It works into its theme well. It introduces unique mechanics that the other subclasses do not really have access to, right? And when I look across the board at the Ascendancies, I can identify, again, for the most part, one real thing in the Ascendancy that stands out as something special about this Ascendancy. Something unique about the way that this Ascendancy functions. Sometimes it's numbers based, sometimes it isn't. An example of this, Blood Mage, an Ascendancy that has been doom posted to hell and back since the start because of the extremely rough experience people had with its initial 2-pointer, which I have found and heard that honestly, it might not actually be all that bad. It's just kind of unfortunately designed, at least as a 2-pointer alone, around a really specific niche that eventually actually becomes much easier to sustain. But if you look at the Ascendancy as a whole, it has a very clear identity, right? Unfortunately, part of that identity is crit caster, and I think that is the weakest part of its identity by far, because it's not a unique function of any sort. It is simply a damage number. Damage number identity is bad. Just think about Assassin from PoE 1. If you guys aren't aware, Assassin in PoE 1 was, a top dog in the game for a while until they just nerfed its damage down. You nerf the damage far enough, and there's nothing else that the Ascendancy provides of value to players, right? It didn't really matter, for example, how many times Elementalist has been nerfed, because Shaper of Flames is such a unique function that you're willing to do anything for it. Trickster used to get literally shit on left, right, and center for providing no damage as an Ascendancy. But Escape Artist provides a level of defensiveness and the nodes behind it that you don't get anywhere else. Right? Like that level of defensiveness is unique to it, or the double body armor from chess pieces from Jug and PoE 1. Or if you look at PoE 2, again, back to the Blood Mage, the Progenesis-like effect on their node that staggers damage. That's unique to them. The node behind that is effectively just the Apostate from PoE 1, where you gain life based on the ES of your chess piece. That's also unique to them. That's a unique layer of scaling defenses that actually gives you a way to scale health, which is something that not a lot of classes or characters in general can do very easily. That's an identity. That's something that gives people hope that the class can be good at some point. Because even if right now the numbers might not be incredible and it might be a lot of pain to make the class work, the identity is there. You can even look at the class that everybody's playing, right? Or as I remember, Stormweaver, probably the most popular. It's either Stormweaver or Invoker from what I last checked. One of those two is probably the most popular class in the game at the moment. Both of them have real identities that warrant this, right? It's not just, oh, they do so much damage. No, though, they have something in their kit that cannot be replicated elsewhere by anyone else, right? Especially the Stormweavers now, right? You could have argued before that the most defining part of what people were doing with Stormweaver was the arcane surge effect scaling, which technically can probably be achieved elsewhere at significantly higher cost. But now that that's being combined with the double shock more effectively, right? With people using lightning conduit and giga juicing their shocks and having both shocks be consumed, that is something that only a Stormweaver can do. That is an identity piece of Stormweaver. The same way that the defensive version of that with Shaper of Winter also applies. That is something that only a Stormweaver can do. That is a unique function that transcends numbers. At some point, the numbers will just be high enough that that is worth using, or low enough in other places that that is worth using, right? And that's fine. You look at Invoker. Most people will look at Invoker and go, "Oh my god, it does so much more damage to Acolyte Shayula." That's not what makes that Ascendancy nuts compared to Acolyte Shayula. It's that top 2 and 4 piece where you get a ton of spirit on your gear while still maintaining a full defensive chest. That's insane. Or the 4 piece, the 4 point behind that, where you get Fizz DR based on your evasion, which I can best liken that to PoE1 players who have ever been a little skeptical of that node. Just remember what Champ felt like when we had Gray's Defiance banner scaling on a Champ. Like, that's basically what you're recreating on an Invoker at that point. That's a different level of tankiness. Absolutely incredible. 100% worth talking about, right? That is an identifying feature of an Invoker. Or the meta skill energy generation it has, because no other Ascendancy has a node of that type. So it's a type of power level that it just will have in that role over other Ascendancies. Not always good design, but it does give them identity, right? I said not always good design because we remember, if you're a PoE1 player, what Saboteur used to look like and how the state of mines and traps were always kind of hitched to the design of Sabo. Not always a good thing, but it is a thing to be aware of, right? At least nothing else. It gives the Ascendancy an identity. It gives you a place to look when you have an idea, like, what Ascendancy supports the idea that I want to do? Oh yeah, bingo. That thing does it. And all the Ascendancies carry such strong identities, right? There are a lot of things that can be done because Ascendancy allows it to be done. Right now, the only Ascendancies that I really am struggling seeing this level of identity with, Witch Hunter and Titan. And it's mostly just because I feel like Witch Hunter and Titan are mostly damage numbers or generic defenses. And I'm not seeing the full angle, with the exception of, you could argue that the sorcery award for Witch Hunter is a little identifying in the sense that it is one of the only ways to get like direct protection against elemental damage. But I think that's a really weak way to describe it. And like, the explodes we've seen are plentiful in the game elsewise. The weapon swap stuff feels like it should be identifying, but I have not seen any uses of it that make me think, oh yeah, this is entirely worth it. But it is at least a feature that it has that's unique to it. So maybe that'll go crazy at some point. But if you look at Titan, nothing in Titan actually really stands out to me as a reason to play Titan. Titan looks like the Ascendancy you pick because you want your slams to do more damage, but not because you feel like it's such a strong and well-designed, unique Ascendancy. It's just cool, big, shouty man, which is fine. Nothing implicitly wrong with this. It's just worth noting, if the numbers were to be reduced, that Ascendancy would fall to rubble with no real hope of redemption, no real reason to cope on it being better. It does nothing special. And that's the thing. So why did I even want to talk about Ascendancies doing things that are special? It is absolutely because I think we need to stop being so harsh on ascendancies, primarily because I don't think that we're even evaluating the right part of ascendancies when we talk about them, right? Yes, damage is cool. Damage is sexy. Damage number go up is go crazy. And in early progression, damage definitely is king. I think that's a large part of what made, say, like Deadeye or, you know, monks with like quarterstaffs and their damage, or the damage profile of a Stormweaver very appealing early on. But I urge you to realize that a lot of the not immediately offensive utility things in other ascendancies, even if they are offensive but not immediately there, are actually very, very high value for a number of reasons. You know, my personal experience with this is definitely Acolyte Chayula and the Into the Breach node, where you click it thinking that like the damage part of it is just lackluster and it's not really worth clicking. But the sustain that you get out of that ascendancy in the earlier stages of the game, especially, is incredible because you don't have that type of assets elsewhere. Or, you know, the mana sustain and potentially even ES sustain that it gets would be off the charts compared to its competitors, right? You want to look at things like that. It's why I mentioned Invoker's big identified thing really being the ES evasion hybrid nodes that then also add in some PDR. Like that section of the Ascendancy is the thing that really stands out to me as like, yeah, this is why I would play an Invoker. And I think that because all the Ascendancies have that, we're in a really good place, again, except for Witch Hunter and Titan. We're in a really good place right now in terms of Ascendancy design, and that there's a ton of viable Ascendancies out there that you should be playing with and trying out, because maybe what you heard just isn't right. Maybe the people you heard from just haven't tried that one wacky, zany idea that you found that would work really well with that Ascendancy. Who the fuck knows, right? That's why I'm so positive on ascendancies. That's why I'm so over hearing the insane streams of criticism about the variety of ascendancies, just because they aren't on the ladder and whatnot, because ladder really is just like, it's one part popularity and one part time taken, especially like we still haven't had a 100 yet, right? Like it's a long push. And just because, as I've said many times before, and I'll say it here again to close out this video, popularity does not mean viability. And I fully mean that. If you rock with the video, you know what to do. If you want to see more elsewhere, those links are in the description. Comment down below your thoughts on the topic, especially if there's anything that you just like are really excited to play around with, or you know that you're waiting to see somebody else do. And I shall see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.